He was drinking my scotch. That was the first thing I noticed when I stepped into the kitchen, before I even registered his face, his cheap cologne trying to fight the smell of Lagavulin, or the fact that he was wearing my robe, the navy one with the frayed cuff I never bothered to replace. He was sitting in my chair at the kitchen island, legs casually crossed, as if he owned the place, as if he'd earned the right to be comfortable in my house. Then I heard the bare feet. Claire strolled in behind me like she'd just returned from yoga, not from detonating 2 decades of marriage. Her voice had that high, bored pitch she always used when she thought she was being honest. "This is Mark," she said, brushing past me like I was a piece of decor. "He'll be staying here from now on." Mark raised his glass. My glass. The one from the set Claire gave me for our 10th anniversary. "Hey man, hope this isn't weird." Claire didn't flinch. In fact, she was smirking. "Either accept the new arrangement," she said, like we were revising a goddamn meal plan, "or go." I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even blink. I just looked at Mark, who clearly thought this was some episode of Real Housewives for the retired and bored, and then back at Claire. Her expression was so smug it actually made me laugh. Quietly, of course. No sound. Just a twitch in the corner of my mouth. That's all she got from me. Then I set my briefcase down, slowly, like I was in no hurry. The silence made her shift on her bare feet. That tiny sound, skin on tile, was the first break in her armor. "Noted," I said. And I meant it. Because 2 years ago, after Claire's girls' trip to Palm Springs ran a little too long, and she came back with a tan line on her ring finger and an allergy to eye contact, I'd started preparing. Not emotionally, not theatrically, structurally. Some men beg, others punch walls. I rewired the fuse box of our life while she was too busy filming cocktail videos for Instagram. Now, if you're reading this and wondering what came next, well, don't miss what's coming. Over 97% of you never hit subscribe, and I get it. You're just listening, driving, passing time. But trust me, this one, you'll want to stick around. That little button motivates our team more than you can imagine. I walked out of the kitchen that night without another word. Left them there, pretending they'd just won something. Claire leaning against the counter like she'd just nailed a TED Talk. Mark sipping 12-year-old scotch he couldn't pronounce. They thought silence meant surrender. But silence is just a doorframe. Some people slam it. Some people walk through. Me? I rebuilt the hinges while they were busy looking smug. I went upstairs, took my old duffel bag out of the closet, the one I hadn't used since that hiking trip we never repeated, and packed exactly 3 items: my passport, a laptop, and a single envelope labeled trigger folder. It was time. And none of them, not Claire, not Mark, not her father who co-signed the lake house loan, not even her divorce-hungry friends who thought I was too passive, knew how close that trigger already was. What did she say? Accept it, or go. She should have prayed I accepted it. I left the ring on the counter, not because it meant something, but because it didn't. That tiny metal loop had gone from symbol to souvenir to warning sign, and I didn't need a keepsake of my own stupidity. Claire never noticed when I took it off, probably assumed I had arthritis, or forgot it in the shower. That was the thing about her version of love. If it didn't glitter or draw attention, it might as well not exist. The house was still quiet. Upstairs, Mark was probably familiarizing himself with my side of the bed, my closet, my wife. I didn't slam a single door. I didn't so much as breathe loudly. Just zipped the duffel shut and walked out into the rain. No dramatic music, just the soft hum of tires on wet asphalt and the rhythmic blink of turn signals. People always assume betrayal makes you emotional. It doesn't. It makes you efficient. 38 minutes later, I pulled up to a climate-controlled facility sandwiched between a bottle return center and a failing yoga studio. Nothing special. You wouldn't look at it twice. And that's exactly why I picked it. Unit B 113, keypad entry, no cameras, no name on the lease, just the name of a shell LLC I'd set up under an old college nickname. The motion lights flickered on as I stepped inside. Everything was exactly where I left it. The locked fireproof safe, the sealed boxes labeled receipts that actually held hard drives, a folding chair I'd never used. I knelt by the safe and dialed the combination. Click. Inside were the papers I'd updated every month for the last 24, a copy of our home's new deed, titled solely to a revocable trust under my name. Claire's name had been scrubbed clean from it a year ago, thanks to a quiet quitclaim she signed without reading when I told her it was a refinance form for a better rate. She was too busy planning a girls' trip to question the notary. There was the post-nuptial agreement she'd signed after I reassured her I'd never seek divorce, as long as she never cheated. Her signature was right there, next to the clause that labeled infidelity as an immediate trigger for asset reassessment. Passwords to the brokerage, the Cayman account, the Montana land parcel we never got around to building on, all of it mapped, printed, secured, and the linchpin, the master trust, the living, breathing organism that now owned every major asset we'd ever accumulated, and she thought she could just replace me with a man who wore another man's robe like a trophy. My lawyer, Tom, an old friend from college who went bald early and got aggressive in tax law to compensate, had once said during a late-night call, "I'm telling you, David, just in case, set it up so she thinks you'd never leave, but if she does, you already did." I remember laughing at the time, not because it was funny, but because I knew how dead on it was. Now here I was, dry inside a storage unit while my replacement was probably raiding my whiskey collection. I sat in that metal chair for the first time, listening to the storm outside and rereading the documents I'd curated like a private museum. None of this happened overnight. Betrayal is rarely instant. It's gradual, drip by drip, eye roll by eye roll, calendar entry by business trip. Claire made the mistake of assuming passivity meant weakness, that silence meant surrender, that my trust in her meant I hadn't protected myself. She was about to learn what I'd actually been doing while she was off chasing new arrangements. And Mark, poor Mark, he thought he'd inherited a lifestyle. He didn't realize he'd inherited a detonator with a 72-hour fuse. I stood up, wiped the dust from the folder, and closed the safe. Exit stage left, but not before sealing the doors behind me. Claire always loved a rebrand. By Sunday afternoon, my timeline, yes, I still had her on social media, purely for surveillance at that point, lit up with a life update that could have been ripped straight from a Hallmark divorcee fantasy. She'd filtered the photo to death, of course, but the scene was unmistakable. The kitchen island, my bar stools, the vintage wine I'd brought back from Bordeaux on our 15th anniversary. Front and center was Mark, grinning like a labradoodle, shirtless under my robe, holding a glass with the caption, "New beginnings deserve aged wine and soft landings. Hash fresh start, hash no regrets." The comments were a parade of digital delusion. Her yoga friends cheered her on. Her coworker chimed in with, "So happy for you, Claire. You look radiant." A cousin I hadn't heard from in a decade posted a clapping emoji. Even her mother, who once told me I was the most stable thing Claire ever found, left a heart. The robe was tied wrong, by the way. Mark knotted it like a bath towel. By Monday morning, the house had begun its quiet transformation. Claire was never subtle. The framed photo of us from Maui was gone, replaced by an abstract print of some leafless tree. My books on the shelf were swapped out with design magazines and a stack of Mark's faux intellectual nonsense, something about mindful masculinity and a memoir written entirely in second person. She didn't try to reach out. She didn't ask where I was. She assumed I'd crawl back after a few days of processing. That was the rhythm of our past fights. She'd escalate, I'd diffuse, she'd threaten, I'd apologize for whatever she invented. Then we'd return to that cold détente called marriage. But this time she had a new dance partner, one who thought he'd won by arrival. Tuesday, her lawyer made a call to the bank. It was routine, really. Claire had asked him to look into the balance of the primary checking account, what she referred to as our house fund. She was already planning renovations, from what I could tell in her Instagram stories. A walk-in wine fridge, imported light fixtures, soft close everything. The email bounced, then the follow-up bounced. That's when her lawyer called her, and I wish I'd been there for the exact moment her forehead creased. Apparently, she'd sent a message requesting access to all joint accounts, only to be told by the bank that her name had been removed as an authorized party 6 months prior. She called back, demanding an explanation, and was told, very politely, that all accounts were currently titled to the Lark Hill Family Trust, managed solely by one David P. Lennox. Her voice must have hit that pitch where dogs across the street perked up. I know it well. She accused the manager of incompetence, threatened legal action, demanded names, but all she got was policy. Meanwhile, she still had access to her personal account, which had just over $4,300 in it, enough for a flight and a week at a mediocre wellness retreat, not enough to play queen of the manor. I watched all of it unfold in silence. One of my contacts in the bank flagged the interaction, sent me the internal note. Client appears unaware of recent title restructuring, advised per compliance protocol. She was so confident, so absolutely convinced that she was orchestrating the next act of her life like a lifestyle influencer on a curated journey. She had a man, a house, and a peaceful separation, but the cracks were forming now, and she couldn't unfilter reality. Later that night, she posted another story, a boomerang of Mark flipping a pancake, laughing like a sitcom husband. Caption, "He cooks too hash blessed." I smiled. Let her enjoy it. She was playing house with a man who thought pancakes meant permanence, and I was just getting started. It happened at Whole Foods. Claire had her cart half full with overpriced cheese, organic bath salts, and 3 bottles of that French rosé she pretended to like because it came in a minimalist bottle. She tapped the joint card without thinking, muscle memory. She used that card for anything that felt ours: groceries, decor, spa days for the marriage, a little retail self-care to reward herself for enduring the chore of being married to a man who paid the bills on time and asked too few questions. Declined. She laughed, out loud, loud enough for the cashier to chuckle nervously with her. She tapped again. The screen flashed red. The cashier tilted his head. "Do you maybe have another card, ma'am?" Claire pulled out her phone, trying to play it cool, tried to transfer funds between shared accounts. Logan failed. She used Mark's card instead, which, judging by the way she inspected the balance in the parking lot, wasn't quite the limitless fallback she imagined it would be. Still, she kept the receipts, tossed them angrily onto the passenger seat of her car, the car that wasn't hers on paper, though she didn't know that yet, and headed home, fuming. That's when she remembered the county deed portal. I'd taught her how to use it once when we refinanced, back when she still thought interest rates were sexy. She logged in using her old credentials. Denied. She clicked forgot password. Nothing came to her inbox. She tried again, this time through the property app. Same result. That's when she called her lawyer. "Alan, hi, quick question. Can you check something for me? I think there's been a glitch on the house title. I can't log in." Alan, who knew something was off from the moment she used the word glitch, said he'd look into it. 10 minutes later, Claire was pacing the living room barefoot on the phone, alternating between fake laughter and clipped demands. "You're telling me I don't own my own house? That's absurd. We bought it together. I was there. I signed the paperwork." Alan was calm. Too calm, probably. "Claire, the deed was transferred into a revocable trust last year. Sole trustee listed is David. It was all done legally, notarized. I can send you the time-stamped filings." "That can't be right." "I double-checked. Your name is no longer on the title." There was a pause. I imagine her eyes widened a bit. That familiar flicker, like when she forgot a hair appointment but tried to play it off like the stylist was wrong. "So what happens now?" she asked, voice thinner than before. "Well, nothing yet. The trust owns the house. David controls the trust. That's the simple version. But I live here. For now." She hung up without saying goodbye. Old habit. She only said goodbye to people she respected. Claire stormed upstairs, opened her file drawer, ripped through folders looking for something, anything with her name still printed on it. She found the original mortgage agreement. Her name was there. She clung to it like a security blanket, ignoring the fact that it was no longer binding. Mark came home an hour later with takeout and a stupid grin. "What's wrong?" he asked, unwrapping dumplings. She didn't answer, just slammed the drawer shut and opened a bottle of wine with more force than necessary. Not the French one, something cheaper. She wasn't ready to pretend to enjoy the good stuff. I watched it all play out through the quiet updates I'd built into the house years ago. Claire never noticed the server hub I installed behind the drywall in the home office, called it David's Nerd Cave, and never asked why the Wi-Fi never went down. She thought the first wall had just cracked. She didn't know it was a load-bearing one, and I had blueprints for every room. Mark had a routine. Every Thursday morning, he wore that smug little half-zip sweater and strutted into the office like he was the future of finance. His LinkedIn profile had been updated immediately after he moved in. Partner at Norston Capital, reshaping wealth for a new generation. He even added a quote, "Innovation is about courage, not caution." He'd posted a selfie that week too. Him on the rooftop patio of the firm's building, arms crossed, city skyline behind him with the caption, "Grind now, play later." What he didn't realize was, he'd already been played. That Thursday, at exactly 9:17 a.m., Mark's direct line lit up. He was finishing an oat milk latte when the number popped up. HR, no caller ID block, just internal. "Hey, this is Mark," he said, voice light, cocky, spinning slowly in his chair. "Mark, this is Judith from HR. We need to discuss something flagged in the compliance sweep. Do you have 5 minutes?" Sure, he said, faking surprise. Everything okay? I'm afraid not. There's been a conflict issue discovered in your employment documents. He blinked, rolled his chair forward. Conflict? Like personal conflict? No, contractual, a pre-existing advisory conflict. Mark paused. You'll have to be more specific. The investment fund you joined, Norstone, has an active advisory board member with direct oversight over your department. That individual is David Lennox. Your current domestic arrangement presents a material conflict, especially considering the oversight clauses in Section 4B of your agreement. It took a second for that name to register, then it hit him like a freight train. David Lennox. He wasn't just the ex-husband, he was on the board. Mark had signed an employment contract with a conflict clause so airtight you could suffocate in it, and he didn't read the fine print because, like most men who think being desired is the same as being powerful, he never imagined he'd be held accountable. I didn't know, Mark mumbled. That may be the case. Regardless, it's actionable, effective immediately. We're terminating your employment. Per policy, your access will be disabled within the hour, and a courier will retrieve company property from your residence. You'll receive a severance notice via email. But, wait. I'm sorry, Mark. The conflict is non-negotiable. Click. He just sat there, stunned, phone still in hand. His boss passed by the glass wall of his office without even making eye contact. The intern had already begun moving his nameplate. Meanwhile, Claire was at home, FaceTiming her sister and bragging about their upcoming relaunch party. She was picking fonts for the custom cocktail napkins when the door opened and Mark stepped in. She didn't recognize the look on his face at first. He wasn't smug. He wasn't hungry. He looked evacuated. What happened? I lost my job, he said flatly, dropping his work bag on the floor. She laughed, then caught herself when he didn't smile. What do you mean? They fired me. David sits on the board. He flagged the conflict. I'm out. Claire blinked, dumbfounded. Wait, David? My David? Apparently he's not yours anymore. She tried to piece it together. But you didn't work for David. I do now. Or did. Doesn't matter. He played me. Us. Claire sat down slowly. He wouldn't do that. Oh no, Claire, Mark said, voice cracking under the weight of his own unraveling. He already did. She picked up her phone, typed in David's number, straight to voicemail. The wallpaper on her lock screen was still that stupid boomerang of Mark flipping pancakes. For the first time since this all began, Claire felt something close to nausea. Not because Mark had been fired, but because she realized something horrifying. Mark hadn't just been pushed out, he'd been baited in, and David had pulled the string like he was swatting a fly. Her upgrade? Turns out it came with a recall notice. 3 days, 72 hours since Mark sat in my robe and toasted his own oblivion. Claire hadn't slept, not properly. She tried pretending everything was fine, kept the kitchen spotless, lit overpriced candles she used to mock me for buying, and filled the fridge with couple food, like pre-made charcuterie boards and oat milk yogurt she'd never touched before. But the cracks were widening. The robe-wearing fantasy of hers was starting to suffocate under the weight of real-world consequences. At 5:04 a.m. on the third day, the silence was broken by the mechanical beep of a tow truck outside. She peeked through the blinds and blinked. The Lexus, the one I'd given her as a birthday gift 2 years ago, was being winched up onto a flatbed. She ran outside in pajamas, screaming. The driver, unfazed, simply pointed to a printed form and said, "New owner. Name's on the paperwork. I'm just doing my job." She demanded to see the name. He handed her the clipboard, the Larkhill Family Trust. She called Mark, who was still asleep on the couch downstairs, jobless, shaken, and now very aware that his supply of artisanal hummus was not being replenished. "Do something!" she yelled. Mark shrugged. "With what, Claire? My advisory privileges? Oh wait, I don't have those anymore." By 8 a.m., Claire was in the lobby of our private bank, dressed in athleisure and desperation, trying to hold authority she no longer possessed. "I need to speak with someone immediately," she snapped at the receptionist. The branch manager came out. Daniel, middle-aged, polite, the kind of guy who remembered birthdays and firm handshakes. "Claire," he said gently, "I'm afraid I can't assist you." "Don't be ridiculous, Daniel. I'm his wife. We've been clients here for—" "You're not on the account," he said calmly. "As of last year, all accounts are held under the Larkhill Family Trust. Authorized party is David Lennox." She leaned in, voice tightening. "This is insane. I need access, now." "I'm sorry, Claire. Legally, my hands are tied." Her hands weren't. They were shaking. "She called me. It rang once, then straight to voicemail. She texted, "We need to talk. This is beyond cruel. Don't do this." No reply. Instead, she received a push notification. Email from a secure delivery service. Subject, formal notice of marital separation and asset isolation. It was real. Her finger hovered over the screen, and for the first time, she hesitated before opening it. But she did. The message was cold, clinical, every clause clearly labeled. In accordance with Section 3.4 of the postnuptial agreement signed on March 9, 2021, infidelity constitutes a trigger event initiating immediate separation proceedings and asset lockout. Please refer to Appendices B and C for outlined asset protections and legal standing. You have 10 days to vacate the premises. No greeting, no sign-off, just a signature from my attorney. She scrolled through the attachments in disbelief, screenshots, timestamps, legal terms she'd skimmed 2 years ago when I told her the agreement was just a formality so we could stop arguing about what-if scenarios. Her hands went numb. She dropped the phone, picked it back up, tried calling again, voicemail. Mark looked at her from the couch and didn't even bother to speak. She marched up to the bedroom, opened the closet, and stared into it like it might still belong to her. Half the hangers were gone. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. She wasn't losing control. She'd already lost it. Now she was just catching up to the truth. And truth, unlike love, doesn't negotiate. Claire set the table for two. She chose the linen placemats, the ones we got from that little boutique in Charleston during our last vacation together, back when together still meant something. She placed them carefully, smoothing the creases like the act itself could undo the unraveling of the past 3 days. She folded napkins, lit candles, even warmed the sourdough she'd picked up from that artisanal bakery downtown. And then she opened the wine fridge, empty. The realization stung. She didn't know how it had all gone. The Burgundy, the Barolo, even the dusty Malbec she once called cheap and sad. All gone. Not drunk, just removed. I'd had the cellar inventoried and moved 2 days ago. Every bottle cataloged, every label now part of the trust portfolio she had no access to. She stared into the hollow fridge for too long, then shut it hard enough for the candle flames to flicker. Still, she tried to salvage the night. She sent Mark a message. "Dinner's ready. Let's just sit down and talk like adults." No reply. Then she called, straight to voicemail. She tried again, blocked. She slammed her phone on the marble counter and paced. He had left, not officially, not dramatically, but emotionally. His hoodie was gone from the coat rack. His laptop charger no longer plugged in at the kitchen island. No note, no keys, just absence. She dialed someone she hadn't called in months, her mother. The line rang longer than expected. When it picked up, the voice on the other end wasn't warm. "You've got 5 minutes," her mother said. Claire paused. "Mom, I think I messed up." Silence. "I didn't think he'd actually leave. Not like this. I thought he'd argue or at least fight for me, but—" Her mother interrupted. "Claire, he warned you." "What are you talking about?" "I told you what happens when a quiet man stops being quiet. You thought he was weak. You mistook kindness for submission." Claire swallowed. "You're siding with him?" "I'm not siding with anyone. I'm just not pretending you're a victim." Click. Claire stared at the phone, then at the empty second chair. She tried calling Jenna, her Pilates friend who always said she couldn't wait to see Claire free and glowing. Blocked. She texted Rachel, her old college roommate who used to call David the last decent man. No reply. She opened Instagram. Her fresh start post had fewer likes than usual. The comments had dried up. A few had even been deleted. Someone wrote, "This didn't age well." Claire removed it. She opened her email to forward something to her assistant, Grace, only to see an out-of-office reply. "As of this week, I've accepted a new position. Please direct future correspondence to Mr. Lennox's office." Claire blinked. Grace, her assistant, the one who coordinated her manicures and lied for her during wine nights with Mark, now working for David. She walked to the table, sat down, and stared at her own reflection in the wine glass she'd set out in blind habit. The candles flickered, the bread cooled. She was dressed up, painted on, postured, but there was no one left to impress. The house was full of furniture and emptiness, and for the first time since this began, Claire realized something she hadn't let herself admit. This wasn't a bump in the road. This was the road now, and she was walking it alone. The doorbell rang at 10:03 a.m. Claire had been sitting on the couch, still in the silk robe she used to wear when she wanted to feel expensive. She didn't expect company, Mark was long gone, the sympathy calls had dried up, and her sister was busy with the kids. She thought about not answering, but something pulled her to the door anyway. She opened it, and there I was. Same coat, same posture, same neutral expression I wore the day I left. No smugness, no gloating, just presence. She blinked like she wasn't sure I was real. David. I didn't speak, just stepped inside with the quiet confidence of someone walking through a hotel lobby. My steps echoed on the hardwood floor she'd once insisted we refinish. I looked around, took in the rearranged furniture, the missing books, the new prints on the wall, all of it curated to erase me. She trailed behind, breath catching in her throat. I didn't know you were coming, she said, a little breathy, trying to keep the tone soft. If this is about the bank stuff, it's gotten out of hand. We should talk. I nodded like I heard her, like I cared. She followed me into the kitchen, and I could feel the tension building behind her eyes, the desperate calculations behind her fake calm. Claire had always been good at adjusting mid-air, changing tone, shifting tactics. She could pivot from seduction to guilt to outrage in under 30 seconds. I let her speak. I know I've said things, done things that hurt you, she began. But we were both unhappy. We drifted. I wasn't trying to punish you, David. I just thought you stopped seeing me. I placed the folder on the counter, unsnapped the clasp, slid a single document across to her. Her eyes dropped to the header. Notice of termination of occupancy rights and property reassignment, Lark Hill Family Trust. She didn't touch it. This isn't, she started, voice cracking. You're not evicting me. You have 10 days, I said finally. My voice was steady, flat, not cold, finished. She laughed, a sharp, panicked sound. David, come on, this is me, this is our house. It isn't, I said. The words hit like the final shove over a cliff. Her face collapsed. Where am I supposed to go? Everything's in your name now. The accounts, the cars. I have nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. Claire stepped closer, reaching for some ghost of intimacy. Please, I made mistakes, but you're not like this. You're not cruel. I looked at her, and in that moment I saw every version of her. The woman who used to laugh with her feet in the ocean, the woman who smirked while her lover drank my scotch, the woman who now stood in front of me, stunned that her consequences had finally caught up. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. The message was clear. She tried again, quieter this time. David, say something. Anything. I nodded, just once, then turned and walked to the door. She didn't follow, didn't call out, didn't beg again, just stood there, clutching a piece of paper that now defined the rest of her life. I paused in the foyer, glanced once at the framed quote she'd hung above the stairs during her minimalist reinvention phase. What you allow is what will continue. I didn't smile, didn't speak, I simply left. And this time, she knew I wouldn't be back. It came at 2:11 a.m. Claire had been lying awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, the house impossibly still. No hum of the wine fridge, no car in the driveway, no background chatter from Mark on a conference call, just silence, and not the kind that invites peace, the kind that mocks you. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. Mark, I didn't know, I'm sorry. That was it. No salutation, no explanation, no signature line with some recycled quote about healing. She sat up, thumb trembling over the screen, typed, please, let's talk. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Message not delivered. She tried again, blocked. Her chest tightened, not with heartbreak, not with rage, but with something slower, stickier, embarrassment. She'd been blocked by a man who'd worn another man's robe. The silence returned. She kicked off the sheets and pulled on a sweatshirt. The robe no longer felt like protection. It felt like costume jewelry, garish and meaningless. She needed to fix something, anything. Alan, her lawyer, he'd help. She opened her laptop, clicked through her bookmarked contacts, and hit send on an urgent email. We need to talk. Things are escalating. I'm not sure what's real anymore. No reply. She checked the outbox. Message sent. Then, just as she was about to close the laptop, a ping from Alan Meyer, ESQ. Subject, retainer status, Claire Lennox. Body, Claire. As per the terms of our agreement, your legal retainer was not replenished after our last billing cycle. As of this morning, your account has been officially closed and archived. Any future communication will require a new contract and fee agreement. Sincerely, Alan Meyer. She read it twice, then again, closed, archived, no warning, no, let's figure it out, just gone. Her last tether to control had been severed by a zero balance. She tried to call the firm anyway, straight to voicemail. She left a message. then another, and a third, voice shaking. But she knew Alan. He didn't bluff, and he didn't work for free. She opened her banking app, but the login rejected her credentials. Again, still. She called the bank. Again, still nothing. "I'm sorry, ma'am, you're not listed as an authorized party." She hung up before the sentence even ended, threw the phone across the bed like it might infect her with another confirmation of just how irrelevant she'd become. Claire had once been the woman with a curated life, seasonal throw pillows, perfectly timed social media posts, a man who brought her morning lattes and quietly handled the taxes she never bothered to open. She had sculpted a reality in which aesthetics replaced substance, and for years it worked, until it didn't. Now the car was gone. The bank was silent. Mark was a ghost. Even Grace, her assistant, had posted a photo earlier that day. A new office, clean desk, the caption, "Grateful for new beginnings, #trust the process." Claire stared at it, unsure whether to scream or sob. She scrolled through her contacts. Friends, acquaintances, networking sisters, all quiet. Some had unfollowed her. One had even tagged David in a post, laughing with her new boss over cocktails. Claire clicked the image. His smile was subtle, controlled, but it was real. For him, this wasn't about revenge. It was about removal, precision over chaos, disappearance over drama. Claire wasn't heartbroken. She was disarmed. The war hadn't ended with a bang. There had been no grand confrontation, no affair exposed on Facebook, no public meltdown, just slow, surgical isolation. And now, finally, she understood. David never needed to yell. He just needed her to run out of places to call. The ice in the glass made that perfect sound, the kind that only comes from a real crystal tumbler and a well-aged scotch. David sat back in the same deep green leather chair he'd claimed every Thursday for the past 9 years at the country club. The club was mostly empty, save for a few regulars lingering after the board meeting, discussing market trends they didn't fully understand and sipping drinks they'd never earned. Outside, the lawn was immaculate, freshly trimmed. Inside, everything smelled like old money and understated judgment. He didn't need to check his watch. He knew what time it was. Claire would be halfway through packing, or, more likely, halfway through sobbing. The movers had strict instructions. Don't engage, just collect and clear. 10 days had passed since the document hit the counter. She had used every one of them to stall, reason, plead, and finally, beg. None of it had changed the outcome. His seat, his drink, his silence, unchanged. "David." He turned slightly. Hal, one of the older members, retired judge, full of gossip and bourbon, stood nearby, brows raised. "Heard a little noise from your end of town this week. Everything all right?" David didn't answer right away, just sipped. Then, with the slightest shrug, "Had to clean house." Hal smirked, let out a laugh that was half wheeze, and gave him a pat on the shoulder. "Hell of a spring cleaning, then." David nodded once, then turned back to the window. From this spot you could see the edge of the lake, the same lake Claire used to pretend she loved, just long enough to justify the mortgage. The same one Mark tried to use as a vision board backdrop in one of his videos. All of it, distant, dull, forgotten. He paid the tab with a nod, left a tip that would make the bartender smile, then walked out, not hurried, not dragging, just moving, like a man with nothing left to explain. The car, a matte black Range Rover under the trust's name, started with a quiet purr. He drove through the winding roads of their old neighborhood with one hand on the wheel, the other resting calmly on his thigh, and then he saw it. The house. Claire's dream kitchen now echoed with the clatter of boxes. The porch, where she once made him pose for staged anniversary photos, was stacked with furniture. Movers carried out the last vestiges of a curated life, faux farmhouse wall art, empty vases, unused cookbooks. One of them dropped a lamp. No one flinched. Claire wasn't in sight. Good. David didn't slow down, didn't even tap the brakes. He just passed it like any other house on any other street. A stranger's home. The engine hummed, the air was clean, the road was open, and on his face, not a grin, not a scowl, but the kind of smile that doesn't need witnesses. The kind of smile that says, "I was never angry, I was simply preparing." He didn't need closure. He was the closure.